Hey there and welcome to my channel. I'm Vonnie from Von Boo, and this time I've picked up this absolute bargain piece. She is solid oak, and I think the only reason she was cheap is because all of those drawer detail fronts were falling off and the drawers were all sticking, but I'm going to fix that. First, I check out what sort of runner system they have and if it can be repaired. And a lot of these pieces are imported, and in our very humid environment they swell, so sometimes a little bit of sanding around the sides can really help. In this case, it is actually easier to just remove all this detail than trying to fill in all the missing bits, and the drawers are actually solid oak, so we don't need these bits. So I'm going to remove them all. I give all the drawers sides a bit of a sand. And I'll apply some scented candle wax to the runners just to see if it's just a sticking issue or if it's a size issue. And I'm really happy to say that that did the trick. Now I'm removing all the hardware, and I'm going to give the fronts a sand. As they are solid oak, they actually may be beautiful just left as timber, but we'll just have to wait and see. I was a little disappointed the drawer fronts weren't a real big wow, because there was a lot of staining from where the detail had been, so I decided I would decoupage. As I had removed that detail, the drawers sat back into the piece, so I had to adjust the stoppers. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but they are these little bits of timber that are inside the drawer that stop the drawer from going all the way in. They just weren't sitting in the right place, so I am readjusting them all over. See, now it's sitting perfectly flush with the piece. It doesn't matter how fabulous or beautifully ornate the piece is, I always like to make sure that the drawers are functional and they work and slide perfectly and they are flush with the piece, just like this. So I have decided I have to show off some of this gorgeous timber, and this base is perfect for it. So I'm using first some paint stripper, and this is going to remove all of that old varnish and stain. I'm covering it with cling wrap so it doesn't dry out, and I'm doing it in small sections at a time. So working small sections at a time, I'm using a carbide scraper to take off the old varnish and the old stain. Now, it doesn't necessarily get all of it off, but it gets the majority of it off. And later we're going to use some soapy water and some steel wool to scrub the rest off. The scrape is great, but it's just not getting into all the crevices, so I'm really going to have to get in there and scrub with a wire brush and then some steel wool. So this is me now using a wire brush with some soapy water just to try and get into all that really old dirty varnish that's in all those crevices. I mean, it really doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to get as much of it out as I can. Now I'm using some steel wool, and I do start with some quite coarse steel wool, and I end up with some fine steel wool. You wouldn't believe it, but since I did this piece, I've actually bought a sander, another festival sander, which would have been perfect with this piece. It is rectangle, so it would have done all those straight edges just brilliantly. But unfortunately, I only had my ETS 150, but it did the job on the flat surfaces. Then there was just a lot of hand sanding power. I'm just using some household bleach to remove some of the dirty stains and lighten the timber slightly. If you're after a really bleached light timber look, you can do several coats, drying in between. But it's really important to neutralize the bleach with some vinegar afterwards, so I just spray it on and just leave it sit overnight. Here I'm just using my hot air gun to dry it a bit, just to see what the timber's looking like. I sealed all that timber with Annie-Sloan's dark wax, but I did forget to mention that after all the bleaching, I did do another lot of hand sanding. And doesn't it look amazing? That oak timber is just gorgeous. Okay, next on to the rest of the piece, and it all gets a bit of a dust down and a good clean. I like to use methylated spirits to clean because it removes all the dust and grime and all the greasy residue, and it dries really quickly. Where I'm putting the decoupage, I'm going to use mint grip as the base for the decoupage. You don't necessarily have to use a primer under the decoupage, but you really need to use a light colour. So I've decided to use Mint by Michelle Peach Petals. This decoupage paper is really gorgeous. First thing I do is decide the placement, and you know, depending on the space, this may take a little while, but you need to get it right. Once I've decided the position, I'll hold it in place while I just put a bit of paste on and get the first bit on, and then it's in place and I can start working from there. If you're wondering what tool I'm using here, it's a felt applicator or a vinyl squeegee. It is the perfect tool for getting this paper on wrinkle and crease free. Misting the paper slightly with some water allows the cellulose in the paper to relax, so the paper actually stretches slightly, which allows easy application over uneven surfaces. You may notice that I'm also using a bit of plastic. This is actually part of the plastic bag that the paper came out of, and this adds a little bit more protection because when I'm using the felt applicator and even my fingers to get into the edges around the drawers, I'm using quite a lot of force, and I don't want to damage the paper. So the plastic actually adds some protection. Also notice that I'm only working a couple of inches at a time, because when you're working with a large piece of paper like this, you only want to deal with having to push out creases, bubbles, wrinkles a couple of inches at a time. It makes a huge difference. When it's 100% dry, I'll use a really sharp blade to slice around the drawers. There's always going to be some edges that haven't pasted down properly, so you need to take them out individually and fix all those edges and corners, and then when they're dry you can sand them all flush. Now I'm going to do the side panels, and I'm using another A1 size of the peach petals. I've cut it to the right size, and I'm going to use the same process to apply it on the sides. I also forgot to mention that I like to seal with this spray varnish before I do any painting. For the base, I'm painting with Mint by Michelle Time and Space Black. I love this black. It's sleek, it's smooth, it's a genuine black. It is self-leveling, so you can apply it with a brush and you will get no brush marks. It also has an inbuilt top coat, so it's optional whether you want to seal again. Well, hello there, aren't you looking fabulous? I am so proud of this piece. I cannot believe I only paid $15 for this piece because she was in such bad condition at first, but I knew I could bring her back to look amazing because she is solid oak and she just needed a little bit of TLC, and she is looking great. If you'd like to see more of my work, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and I would really love if you would love this, share this, and maybe even subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.